Okay, hello, welcome to the channel. My name is Victor, and I'm going to be your anchor for this training. So this is series 11. I'm trying to make the videos as snappy, short as possible. Some of them are up to an hour. So let's see how much we can cover in this next session. So this is the CompTIA certification, the two core-based exams, Core 1 and Core 2. If you check the curriculum for Core 1, that's 220-1001. So mobile device, networking, hardware virtualization, and cloud computing, hardware network troubleshooting. Then for 2, we have operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operating procedures. So try to look at the content and see how we can prepare ourselves to get the CompTIA A+ certification. Cisco have their alternative, which they call ITE. Cisco Information Technology Essentials. On the channel, there's a complete curriculum explanation for the Cisco exams. Okay, so this is Microsoft Windows networking features on client desktop. So if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And if you know anyone that is interested in building up a career in tech, these are fundamentals with respect to DevOps, with respect to cybersecurity, with respect to cloud computing. So let's try it on. So objective. Now, understand that the exam is based on objectives. And if you check the curriculum, you're going to see the different objectives, what you should be able to do, what you should be able to define, and all of that. So the content is based on those very, very important aspects of the certification. Okay, given a scenario, configure. So if I try to search this objective 1 point, this is on the 1102. If I try to search for this here, let me a moment. Configure Microsoft Windows networking. Okay, let me just search for configure Microsoft Windows networking, right? Configure Microsoft network, Microsoft Windows networking on a client desktop. So what we want to learn about is home group, work group, domain setup, network shares, files, printer sharing, VPN, dial-ups, wireless, wired and WAN, wireless WAN, then proxy settings, remote desktop connection or computing, remote assistance, and for instance, for remote assistance, a lot of softwares are overtaking some of these features that we had in Windows, like Zoom, like I think even Skype. You can use that to do remote assistance. What else again? There's this one I have on my PC. Here, what's the name again? Kind of forgotten it. TeamView, right? So TeamView, you can use that to also do TeamViewer. You can use that to also do remote assistance. So most of these softwares are overtaking some of these inherent features we had in Windows. And of course, IP address in Windows and network card properties. What can the card, your wireless card or your LAN card, what can it do? What's the speed? How many duplex, two-way communication, quality of service, the basic input-output system that's on the board NIC. So Windows networking includes 3 different types of networks. So we have remote control, an assistant option, a built-in firewall, and much more. The following sections can help you master networking concepts. Now, this is not a networking course. There's a Cisco CCNA 1, there's a CCNA 2. Upcoming in the future, I'm going to also record the enterprise networking, security, and automation. That's CCNA 3, the NSA certification on the channel. So this is not a networking course. There's a CCNA 1 on the channel, but for somebody doing basic computing, hardware, repairs, maintenance, troubleshooting, you should have some basic idea about networking. You should be able to set up basic SOHO networks at a small office home network. You should be able to set up that. So let's look at work group versus domain setup. Windows 10 supports both 2 different types of network, work groups and domains. The following section describes how they differ from each other. Workgroup networking. Now, normally I would want to have let's say 2, 3, 4, 5 systems sharing resources. And the question is, what is a network? A network is 2 or more systems, 2 or more devices sharing resources. And the resource can be anything. The resource can be a network, the resource can be files, the resource can be printer, the resource can be internet, the resource can be anything. So you don't have a network only when you are sharing internet. No, you don't also have a network only when you are sharing, let's say, a file. You don't have a network only when you are sharing a printer. So the umbrella word there is resources. So when you have more than 2 systems or more than 1 system, rather, sharing resources, you call that a network, and the different kind of things they can share. And when we set up such kind of platform or such kind of network, we call it a work group. All computers can share folders and devices with other computers in a peer-to-peer arrangement. File and printer sharing is possible, right? That's why if you say network sharing, right, you will see that printers, you could do a lot of sharing. There are a lot of things you can do, right? Let me come here. Tap on, I think here. So you could turn on network discovery for this particular system. For all the other networks, you could turn on file sharing. Then you could also turn on and say, okay, no, I want it to be protected, right? So these are the features you have when you have those pieces on a workgroup. I will let you know a simple command that you can use to verify that. All computers must be part of a local network or subnet. It then means that if I want 3, 4 systems to share a particular file or printer or any other resource, I need to make sure that they are on the same network, on the same LAN. So I have 10 systems maybe connected to a switch, then, or maybe with a router in between, I can be able to do that sharing. So you see, I have 192.168.100 to let's say 120, right? With the subnet of this, they can share resources with each other, but not with computers with the IP address this. So this is on a different subnet, right? In short, this is on a different LAN altogether, because this is 192.168.1. So this is 2 dots. Right? So this is on a different LAN, this is different LAN. So the work group does not have a password. However, each computer must have a user account for each user to be able to access our computers. How do you create a work group? Configure all. Now, in Windows 2000, Windows XP, Windows 2000, Windows XP, Windows 7, I think, yes, after Windows XP and 7, you didn't need to do all of the different configurations, right? You didn't need to do a lot more than just enabling sharing. But in Windows XP and Windows 2000, you have to go to create a network. You set up a network, put it on a work group. Let's try and say step by step, create a network on Windows XP. Trying to compare. So you have to go to start, settings, network connection. You start up the wizard. Then you start doing next, and tell it what and what you want to share till you are done. You put this particular system on the network. But in Windows 10 and subsequently Windows, I think even 7, you didn't need to do all of that. You just needed to navigate to Network and Sharing Center. That is this area where I am, Network and Sharing Center. You go to your advanced sharing settings, and you just indicate what and what you want to share. Right? That's why you see some systems, if it's already turned on, the sharing is already turned on, you turn off the password protected sharing, everything is turned on. Make connecting 2 systems and they can share resources. So it's a lot easier to connect 2 systems compared to older versions of Windows. An easy way to access system properties is to open File Explorer, right-click on PC, then select Properties. Now, you want to ask yourself, which work group do I belong to? Because you see, in some enterprises, they might place different computers on different work group, so that those computers can share their own resources. You can say, okay, this is where we have the print server. Then we can have 4 or 5 systems. They share resources there. They will not be able to have access to other things shared on other work groups. So how do I know? So simply do a Windows R, you come to your run command, you say sysdm.cpl, and you okay, it will take you to the system properties and also go to the computer name, and you can tell that you are on the name work group, which is the default work group name. Another way to do this is to say, I will normally say Windows E, then I will right click here and say properties. I will still, let me see if I can get there. Okay, I think this is a longer cut. That might be a shortcut. Okay, let me see. Windows R, okay. Computer, okay, let me get the shortcut. Shortcut for getting Windows work group. Windows R, NCPPL, okay, it's still the same thing. Okay, shift, control space bar. I think that's fine. We can still use this one. It's short enough. That is Windows R. Put this command, then you enter, you're going to see the workgroup that you belong to. Then domain setup. So larger networks, including networks with users in multiple locations, use domain networking. So if you have a branch A, a branch B, a branch C, then we might need to put them on an Active Directory. It gives us a whole lot of control on what we can share, whether it is file, whether it's printers, whether it's email. We can share quite a lot of resources, file, folder, printers, and devices. So we use domain. So we use Active Directory to like set up all of that. An Active Directory server, it's used to authenticate users. And when you start doing cybersecurity, Active Directory hacking is one thing. Active Directory authentication is one area you want to make sure that you learn and you're competent about, because for your interviews, for your questions, your skill set, it's one nice skill set that is always going to be measured. Users are not tied to a particular computer. A user on a domain can use any computer or computers on a domain and have access to these files and shared resources. So typically use group policies. Okay. So if we need to set that up, so a domain setup for a computer is performed from the computer name section of this system properties to join. So you just follow the steps. Open system properties, you go to change settings, you tap on network ID, next, put it on a domain, and you are there. Network shares. So network shares is one important thing when it comes to basic networking. Let's say you have 10 systems and you want them to share a particular folder. The basic thing you need to do if you're running Windows 10 or running Windows 11, you just right click on that folder and you share it on the network. But one of the first things you want to do is to make sure that first, that particular system is already on the network. So right click, I say it's properties, I go to, why am I not seeing this? Okay, let me get a folder. Let me get a folder, properties, sharing, right? So I could share. Once I say share, anyone that is on my network, it's going to be able to actually have access to this file, right? If I've turned on file sharing in the previous configuration we did. A workgroup network can offer unlimited sharing, full control, or read-only. So there's what we call the read-write assets. So let me do an example. Can I? let's say this folder now, if I right click on this folder, let me right click this folder for instance and say properties, this htdoc, and say sharing, and I say share, or rather let me use the advanced sharing so that you can see what I'm trying to say. Advanced sharing. So share this folder. So permissions, then you can see the different types of access that you can grant. You can add people that you have on this network, right? Their name, search for them, their name. Then you can now say, okay, I want the person to be able to only read. I want to allow the person to be able to change content in this folder. Then I want to give the person full control. Then you can also do some denials. So that's what's possible when you have a system on a network. So you have full control or read only. Okay, you also have administrative shares. For instance, when you are sharing an entire drive. I remember there was some time during the Windows XP era, somebody, I think it's in the office, or I went to get something from the computer store, and somebody brought in a laptop. I think that laptop is a Hasse laptop. Some of these Asian laptops, Hasse laptop. Hasse, yes, Hasse laptop. So it's not too much of a common brand. I think it's Asian based or Chinese based. They do nice laptops too, but not too much of a big brand. This particular system the person brought didn't have, I think, CD-ROM. And I think that was the era where most systems started moving away from, you have some of this 14-inch system moving away from having CD drives and the rest, making them become compact and all of that. Now, I think in the computer store where I went to get something, everybody was trying to see if they can fix, and you didn't have flash drives or very big sizes. Then you just have maximum 512 MB. And what was to be copied was, I think, in gig or so. Hard disks was maximum you could get was like 200 gig, and external hard disks was also common then. So I think it was a big issue for them to actually do all of the configurations they wanted to do. I think while they're sitting there and trying to look at what the solution was, I felt that I could use networking skills to like solve this problem. So I think I told the owner of the laptop, I said, okay, I could fix this for you. I just need to think through it. I had a Pentium 3 desktop at home. I had a laptop too. So I think what I did was that I picked up the laptop, networked the laptop and the Pentium 3 desktop. This Pentium 3 desktop had a CD-ROM. Then all I did was to go to the, you know, when you have a drive, you have the CD-ROM, you right-click the CD-ROM. That's what I did. Right-click the CD-ROM and shared the CD-ROM, right? Shared the CD-ROM. And once I shared the CD-ROM, automatically the CD-ROM is going to appear on the drives of the laptop. And I just had to put in all of the CDs, put in all of the softwares, and did all the installation, and I took it back. By the time I got it back, everybody was like surprised. How did you do it? How did you do it? Now you see where to fix a system, at times you need some networking skills to be able to do that. That's why the A+ certification content has a little bit of networking, right? So that you can be able to solve some problems that you might not be able to just solve with just being a power user. Now, here we're trying to do some administrative shares. We want to share drives like I just did earlier on. We're trying to share this guy. This is a drive. We can share this drive. Sharing, advanced sharing, tap on share. I can say, okay, I want 20 persons simultaneously. If I have 20 persons on, we are together in the same network. 20 persons can simultaneously be accessing these hard disks if I have a folder that I want people to access. In a company where you have 50 persons or 20 persons, there is a folder where people write reports, drop them, people collect reports, edit them, drop them, versionize them, all of those kind of things. do their report weekly or daily, it might not be a good idea to be passing flash drives, CD drives, passing for pen hard disks up and down. So they could just explore sharing a folder or getting a network drive. A network drive is going to suffice and is shared on the network, and everybody can have access. Network drive. You have them in different sizes. They can come in small sizes, in maybe 500 gig terabytes. Some of them can come as in massive terabytes, right? Like 20, 50, 30, depending on what the needs are. Once they are shared, they can be accessed on the network, then people can actually use them. Sharing a folder, I just did that a while ago. So you just go to this place and make sure that you enable file sharing is enabled. If file sharing is not enabled, you won't be able to share a folder. How do you do that? Let's assume this file. This is a folder. I just need to do properties, do sharing, tap on it. Sorry. This, not, it's saying not shared. I say share. And I'm going to indicate who I want to share it with, but I have to be on the network. Now, another thing is that you must make sure that file sharing is enabled. You can do network and manage advanced sharing settings. Then you want to go to, yeah, it's already there. So you just turn on, what's it called? Network sharing. If you don't turn this on, you will not be able to share a file to a person. If you share it, then they will not be able to access it. Mapped network drive. So Windows enables shared folders and shared drives to be mapped to drives. So letters to client. A shared resource can be accessed through the network using the share name. Of course, things like either a folder or a printer, all of that can be shared. You see the guide there. Same thing applies to printers. I've shown you how to add a printer. Just go to printers. The printer should be connected first, then you say add printer. Once you add the printer, you can also right-click on the printer and you share the printer. Some of these things, if they're hard for you, you just do a simple Google, share a printer on Windows, let's say 11. You see the step-by-step guide on how to do that. There's a lot of documentations now in most vendors, their site, and it's not too much of a big deal. So you see the steps. Start, settings, device, printers, manage, printer properties, share this printer, right? Windows Defender. So Windows Defender offers protection, right? If you say Defender, you're going to see the Windows Defender, right? It's like a firewall, it's like a protection that ships with the Windows operating system. So it's to make sure that you don't have malicious content served on your PC. I must make sure it's turned on, except you have an antivirus that's helping you do that. Client network configuration. Basically, how do you connect a laptop to wireless? So IP addressing scheme. I think it's important for you to look up the channel and go through the CCNA 1 training. It will help you a lot if you want to pass the networking sections of the exam, because that is a little bit more detailed compared to what you have here. So most people will regularly just tap on their Wi-Fi signal indicator, tap here and select from any Wi-Fi available and put in their password. Subnet mask. What is a subnet mask? Now, IP addressing scheme. So you want to have a situation whereby, for instance, if you are running IP version 4, we have two of them, IP version 4, IP version 6. Now, you should want to know the difference between IP version 4 and IP version 6. We've looked at that in the networking section of this training earlier on in one of the modules. I think series 1 or 2. So we said IP version 4 is 32 bits. That is 8 bits, 8 bits, 8 bits, 8 bits of data. If you times 8 by 4, you have 32 bits. Now, that way, we can have 1 to 254. Normally, we say 255. But 255 is inclusive of the server or the gateway. Now, what about if I have 300 PCs? Will it be possible for me to use this IP coming from my server? Because if I do CMD, IP config, so this is my gateway. If I put this on my browser, it's going to tell what ISP or whatever I'm using. So I'm using an Airtel router, a 4G router to have access to the internet. That's one. So this guy is going to take 1. Now it's telling me that other systems on this network, I have like 2, 3 other items or systems that's connected to this. Let me disconnect 1 and refresh. I'm going to refresh. So I should see 2. Let me disconnect 1 more and refresh. I should see 1, which is this particular laptop. Now, for every additional device, I don't want to start logging into this system to be able to check the different IP address. Let me see. Let me connect. Just a second. Let me connect the other 2 devices. Let me refresh. So I have 3 back. I think just a second. Clear screen CLS. ARP-A. So I have 255. Another system is variant 255. This static, this dynamic, then IP config. This is 120. So this is 120. And this is 255. So this seems to me that I have 2 additional systems aside this guy. This guy is my gateway, which is this. This is my gateway, 192.168.1.1, which is this. This is another system, and that is another system. Let me see if I can get the command. Get IP address of all devices on the network. CMD command. Let me get CMD command that can get that for me. So that's what I did. ARP-A. Okay, let me inspect this a moment. I'll see. And how many devices do I have here? Just a second. So ARP-A is supposed to give us most of the items. Optional -P allows to perform my extended. Okay, let me try this. ARP, address resolution protocol. Address resolution protocol is the protocol that enables the DHCP server, that is the router, to assign IP addresses to all of the devices you have on your network. So when I say ARP-A, if you say ARP this or you say ARP this, it's going to give you all the possible, ARP question mark. It's going to give you all the possible commands that you can have with that particular command. So if I scroll up a bit, I'm going to see ARP-A displays current ARP entries by interrogating the current protocol data. If INET_ADDR is specified, the IP and physical address for only the specified computers are displayed. G displays current ARPs in verbose mode. All the invalid entries will be shown. So let me do ARP-V and see. ARP-V. Didn't get anything much. ARP-A ping dash T. Is that what I saw there? Ping dash T, yes. Nothing much. So ARP dash A. So I think I have one. And I wonder why it's not picking ARP dash IP config and this. So those two guys. So that's the two guys. I think the two guys I have here. I've seen I have three. So you can still troubleshoot and see how you could get, of course, if you log in into this guy or you use a tool like Nmap or any network mapper, if you scan, you should be able to get all of the IP addresses clearly connected to the network. Okay, so subnet max is a way we can like make our network larger so that we can address more devices, right? So like if you see from 192.168.1.1, I have .2, the next system .3, .4, .5, .6. This guy dynamically is speaking .120 up to 255. Without subnetting, I will not be able to address more than 255. That is 254 exclusive of the default gateway, which is this guy, right? So what subnetting does for us is that it helps us to like get more devices on the network. Okay. So let me compare subnetting versus supernetting, right? Supernetting is the opposite of subnetting. In subnetting, a single network is divided into multiple smaller subnetworks. In supernetting, multiple networks are combined into a bigger network termed as a supernet or supernetwork or supernet. So this is actually beyond the scope of this course. I think I started doing some recordings for CCNE2, that is routing, switching, wireless essentials. So that's where you learn all of those routing, switching stuff. So, but for now, understand subnet, what it does, understand DNS server, understand work group, understand IP addresses. The domain name server, domain name systems, they are all DNS and is port 53. You should also know that. So this is basically for names, because you see, if I type a domain name, if I say, let me go to this browser, if I say southtechventures.com, take for instance, this site is going to load and it's going to show quite a lot of, it's going to show the content you have on site. So what you need to understand is that domain name systems, domain name server is port 53. Then, like I said earlier on, if you have, let's say we go to CMD, the question is, how are we able to map domain names, or how do we recognize domain names? How are we able to tell that, okay, this domain name is here, it's on this particular server? How do we keep track of all of that? And that's why we use the domain name system. So if I ping southtechventures.com, it can tell me, okay, it has this particular IP address, and this IP address is on a particular server. So I can pick this IP address now. I can go to something like a service like Whois, or go to a DNS server verification platform. I could drop this domain name. It can tell me, okay, who owns this particular IP address. So this website is behind a Cloudflare network, is behind a Cloudflare server. So because it will not be easy for us to memorize all of these IP addresses, so we need something like a name to be able to tell websites, to be able to tell domains, to be able to tell platforms. So something like Microsoft.com, if I ping Microsoft.com, if I ping Microsoft.com, right? I'm going to get 20.231.2. So I cannot be carrying this on my head or in my head. So I just need to know Microsoft.com, and it's going to map to this IP address, then it's going to map to the server, then it's going to get to wherever it's being hosted. That's why if I say traceat Microsoft.com, it can tell me the traces. It can trace all the routes, all the servers, all the hops, all the networks between my point where I am now and where this particular website is hosted. So all of that is being handled by the ISP through domain name systems, domain name servers. So if you're a web application developer, you hear things like, okay, DNS propagation, DNS, and all of those stuffs. Now you see that this is my IP address, this is my server. So it's going to go from here to another gateway, to another gateway, to another gateway, till it gets to 20231239.246. If this is hard for you to understand, just keep it simple and summarize this to mean that you have different networks before you can get to where a particular website is hosted. And one way we can identify these platforms is by their IP address. Or in the reverse sense, instead of us to keep track of this IP address, we can use names. And we map the names to the IP address. And that's what the domain name system is all about. So gateway, so what's a gateway? So a gateway is a device on a local network like the one I showed you earlier on. So this is my gateway. When I do, clear my screen. So let me just close this. When I do when I do a simple IP config, this is my gateway, right? So what's a gateway? 192.168.1.1. So a gateway is simply a device on a local network that serves other devices, most of the times our routers. Now, also known as a default gateway, ensures that when a computer is sending communication out of the local network, it goes to the router. The default gateway is most likely the local router, local interface, like I showed you my own. That is this 192.168.1.1. So if I copy this guy and put it on my browser, it's going to tell me whatever ISP I belong to. So if you're in any environment, you can just run the ping test IP config. It grabs those details. You can put on your browser and know what application or what gateway or what kind of device that you're using. Static and dynamic IP address. So the idea is that for each of these IP addresses that you're going to be having, how is it going to be assigned to you? Is it going to be assigned in a static manner, or is going to be released as available? So there are two ways to do it. So the ARP protocol and the DHCP protocol, that's the address resolution protocol, and the dynamic host configuration protocol. These two guys are in charge of dispensing IP addresses. So if a system or a phone or a tablet or a printer comes on a network, the first thing that happens if it's set up to be DHCP is that it checks between the range of 1 to like 255, or rather 2 to 255, which IP address is available and nobody is using it. Anyone that is available, it assigns it to the particular device. That is what it's using dynamic host configuration protocol. So that means that it's dynamic. So you can change. If you leave, let me do something. Let me clear my screen. Let me do IP config /all. So it's going to give details about when the lease occurred today at this time and when it's likely to expire. So if I don't come on this network after this time, I may no longer be using this IP address. If I leave for like a few days, a week, 2 weeks, 1 month, somebody else might be assigned this IP address. So within this period, no other person is going to be assigned this IP address. Is DHCP enabled? The answer is yes. So dynamic host configuration protocol. If it was static, it then means that you have to assign manually the IP address. How do we do that? Let's go to network adapters. Manage network adapter settings. So for each of those adapters we saw on IP config all, let's go to yes. Look at this guy now. If I click on properties, check on IP version 4, for instance. So you see there are two ways we can do that. We can do it dynamically, DHCP, or we can do it manually. So automatically now it's on automatic. So it's DHCP is in action here. It then means that the router is going to automatically assign me IP address. But if I don't want that situation, I can pick one IP address, assign it, let's say 192.168, whatever. If I do that automatically now, this remote call is going to be over because I will no longer have access to the router. So because I don't have an address that I can use to communicate with the router, so the router can communicate me to the outside world, to the internet. So if I use a static IP address, what's going to happen is that I'll have to manually assign the IP address. I'll have to manually assign the IP address. So that's the difference between static and dynamic. And there are several reasons why you might want to use static, you might want to use what's it called, dynamic IP address. Especially for some mission critical devices, for things like, let's say in healthcare, in banking, things that you don't want to really change, you can use static so that it's not temporal. Nobody else can actually use that particular IP address. So there are different ways to establish network connection. It can be Wi-Fi, it can be Ethernet, it can be VPN, it can be dial-up, it can be hotspot, it can also be through a proxy. So this just explains each of them and the steps. Wireless can be wired. It can also be proxy. Then let's look at File Explorer navigation, network paths. So earlier in this chapter, the File Explorer, the folder icon in the taskbar, was used to map a network drive. Similarly, network information can be mapped using File Explorer by selecting a network icon from the menu on the left to trace the path on the network. So let's see what this looks like. So it's something like this. Just a second. Let's say Kali Linux machine. So this is going to be shared on the network. So this is going to be the exact URL for this. It's going to be shared on the network. This is going to be the exact URL for it. And of course, the shared, this is going to be on the shared drive or shared folder. Let's look at metered connections and limitations. Now, the idea is that, what about if I have Airtel, Glo, Etisalat, Vodafone, any kind of network from any part of the world, and my ISP, I want to like tell my operating system that this connection is metered. How do I do that, right? So the advantage of that is that it's going to limit the kind of things it's going to do, and it can give me alerts so that I can be able to manage either my bandwidth, or I can be able to manage my throughput. That is the data limitations that has been given to me by my network. So you can do that by checking the metered. I think you can get that in Wi-Fi. Just a second. You can get that in Wi-Fi. If you go to Wi-Fi settings, you go to manage known networks. And I think, let's say I pick this particular one. I think, just a second. Set, this is it. Metered connection. Set a data limit to help control data usage on this network. So I tap on this. I can now put specifics and I'll tell it, okay, I don't want to go more than this particular gig. Okay, alert me when I see this or stop this. So it can also tell me how much I've consumed over a period of time. The last 30 days, I've done 30 gig on Chrome alone. If I enter a limit, I can now say, okay, I don't want to exceed, I want to reset this monthly, and I don't want to exceed 10 gig. What will happen is that after I've reached 10 gig, then I will not be able to browse, right? So if you have such kind of situation, you want to see their limits, and it can also help you to manage your data allocation. So that's what you have here, setting limits. That's what you have in the picture there. Installation and configuration concept. So let's look at this in another series of video because this maps to objective 1.0.